The report, termed the County Citizen Report Card, highlighted grave misappropriation of funds in audited accounts. According to the survey, a financial audit of the county projects for Kwale, for instance, revealed that 22 million shillings went down the drain.
These reports that are given here highlight the magnitude of resources being given by CRA to the counties and national government, and also the extent to which those resources are not being fully utilized to the expectations and aspirations of Kenyans.
The National Association of Taxpayers raising concern that the governors may be receiving funds without proper checks and balances being put into place to ensure that the funds are well spent. The report claims that Busia County wasted nearly 43.5 million shillings, nearly 13% of its allocated funds. From the 6 sampled counties, Nyeri appears to have had the most funds unaccounted for, with 158 million shillings largely claimed to have disappeared. 3.5 million shillings from Kitui County's public coffers may have been mismanaged, while Nandi County allegedly could not explain where 21.7 million shillings went.
This office is going to audit the shilling from when it is budgeted, it is recorded, and when it hits the ground.
Projects that have been abandoned, they actually total up to 273 million, and that's about 16% of our budget.
The survey, conducted between the month of June 2015 up to June this year, involved the offices of the Controller of Budgets as well as the Commissioner for Revenue Allocation. Well, it's certainly not the first time such a report is being released to the public. This time round, just 6 out of the 47 counties being highlighted. A small fraction by all means, but what looms large is the fact that indeed county governments still have a long way to go in ensuring funds directed to specific projects go to their intended purposes. Timothy Otieno, KTN News.
Good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us on The Last Word tonight. My name is Sophia Wanun, and as you have seen from that report there by our Timothy Otieno, today we are focusing on the county governments and more so taxpayers' money. How are your funds, how is your money being appropriated or misappropriated in the county government? And of course, with the inception of that system of governance, many hoped that bringing services closer to the people, to bring about development to all the counties, no matter which parts of the country, that there would be that form of equilibrium or at least progress that's fast-tracked. But the question now is, was it bringing services closer to the people, or was it bringing looting closer to the unscrupulous individuals that we're seeing doing the same? And of course, in recent days, we've had President Uhuru Kenyatta talk about an importance to be able to ensure the checks and balances are being looked at in as far as counties are concerned. And I have those 6 reports here from the counties that were looked at by the National Taxpayers Association, and we have the national coordinator with us in studio. Martin is with us. Martin Napisa, thank you so much for being with us tonight. And next to me is Ken Gishinga, who's an economist. We appreciate you taking the time to be on The Last Word tonight. And also want to hear from you at home. Do you think, owing from what you hear tonight, if you've not followed that report by Timothy, do you think it is possible to tame the kind of misuse of your money that's happening in your county? Of course, 6 counties were looked at by the National Taxpayers Association, and we've seen the kind of frustration that is going down. Looking at Nyeri County as an example just today, live rats, imagine that. A demonstration carrying live rats to demonstrate the members of county assemblies' proposal to put up a health club where they can get the massages, the manicures and pedicures and sundowners, whereas the residents there believe there is better use that money could be going to. So be part of the conversation tonight. Let's hear your views. Let me begin with you, Napisa. As the National Taxpayers Association, briefly, for those who may not be aware or familiar with your work, what do you do? What's your mandate?
National Taxpayers Association represents the taxpayers of this country.
As you realize, the Kenya government has, or the Kenya as a country has Kenya Revenue Authority, which collects taxes on behalf of the government. But the taxpayers did not have a voice. So the establishment of National Taxpayers Association to be the voice of the citizens, the people who pay taxes, actually to be able to demand, accountability in terms of how their money is being used. So the taxpayers is the voice, Taxpayers Association is the voice of the taxpayers in Kenya in terms of service delivery on how their money is supposed to be used. Because we realize Kenya is one of the best countries, in this part of Africa, where revenue collection is actually very, very high. Sometimes back, we were talking about being able to support ourselves to meet our recurrent budget to about 95%, and that is a lot of money. In fact, minus corruption, Kenya does not need to borrow any money from any country anywhere.
Yeah. So it's the leakages in the system that are getting us to a situation where we still have to cover for that. So let me briefly bring us up to speed. So 6 counties, in terms of what you've highlighted as wasted funds in them: Busia County, 43 million, Nyeri County, 158 million approximately, Kitui County, 3 million, Nandi County, 21 million. And I have all of these. So first, why just 6 counties? Did you look at them?
For us, as an association, we are funded by the donors. So there is a limit to which we can be able to do. And that's just the start. Of course, our intention is actually to monitor all the counties.
Right.
But we don't have the resources. So we just piloted in 6 counties. Remember, sometimes back we were looking at the Constituency Development Fund. And we managed to look at more than 134 constituencies on how they were using the money. But now, after devolution, we said, let us use the same way we were assessing the constituency to look at the counties. Because devolution is a big thing. Yeah, Kenyans voted for the constitution because of devolution. Service is closer to the people.
Yeah.
So the success of the counties is at the heart of every Kenyan. And thus our focus is mostly on counties. So we just piloted on 6 counties to see how the trend is. Because when we were monitoring the Constituency Development Fund, when we started monitoring in 2009, we realized that the wastage was as much as 29%. After 5 years of monitoring, the wastage had come to about 13%.
Yeah.
And we realized that as an association, we were making a lot of impact in terms of empowering people for them to be able to monitor and reduce those wastages.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, Ken, let me bring you in and we'll continue to canvass more about this, your findings on the report. But what do you make of this? I mean, it's 6 counties, but still glaring misappropriation of funds, and we've seen to the extent an actual example of an issue bedeviling one of the counties, which is Nyeri, and actually of the 6 it has the highest loss of funds, or at least misappropriation of funds. What do you make? Is it a big mistake we made devolving?
Well, thank you, Sophie. Perhaps I can start by saying, if you look at the report, the overarching theme in the report is that there is a high degree of skullduggery happening in the counties. And in as much as this was only looking at 6 counties, my gut feeling is that if you look at all 47 counties, you'd still find high degrees of wastage of funds.
Right.
Now, back to your question, was this devolution a waste of time? Perhaps I can also say that this is actually the 2nd time that the country has implemented devolution. The first time was in 1962, when we had the Majimbo system, which was quickly scrapped upon the new government. And now in 2010, this is sort of like the 2nd phase. The idea behind it was to bring service delivery closer to the people. And in reality, we have seen some major benefits, especially in what we call the marginalized counties, in Mandera, in Samburu, in dry areas like Makueni.
Right.
So there has been progress, but absolutely I think there are some fundamental gaps that both legislative, both capacity-wise, both structure-wise, that need to be addressed in the next 1 year.
Yeah. So it's not hopeless. There's been some good.
Oh yeah.
But is this reversing some of that good so that it might as well never have been?
It definitely kills public confidence anytime you talk about counties not being able to account for 20, 30, 40 million.
Yeah.
But if you look at, for example, areas like Mandera County, where in the last 1 year, they've been able to procure 27 cesarean section baths. And in the last 50 years, they never had the facilities to do cesarean sections. If you look at places like Makueni, where they've built major reservoirs of water, 400,000 liters of water. If you look at areas such as Lamu, where we have a speedboat ambulance that's able to carry people to the mainland, before, if you are unwell in Lamu, you'd be taken on a donkey or somebody would have to carry you. So there's still major progress, but you're right. I don't think we've fully created enough legislative frameworks for it to be for it to capture the aspirations of Kenyans. Yeah.
So you say the glass is half full, largely. Yeah, from what you said. But Martin, let me bring this back to you so that we have a good understanding, because, you know, from the 6 counties, the amounts of money that you found to have been wasted, what's the scope of your study and this report? Was it the entire county and all the projects, or 100% that is, or what was the percentage is it you were able to investigate?
What we did, we sampled, of course, counties, but even those counties, we sampled projects, at least in every department, and we were sampling a very few projects in every department. When you look at some of those counties, we were actually, the highest could be having about 40 projects. Others are just about 25 projects. So those are very few projects. But we wanted to look at the project that the counties had allocated the highest amount of money, and just to see the trend in terms of how, first of all, how is access to information, for example, because we think information is empowering. One thing that we've tried to do as an organization is empowering the citizens for them to be able to participate. So we wanted to see access to information and actual participation, because we believe once people participate, they can be able to improve. Right. So actually the percentage of projects that we looked in each of those counties is just very small, because in overall, in all those counties, we looked about 185 projects, which are very few, just as a sample for us to be able to see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the wastage then is much more, would you say? Because I was talking to an economist, you know, following your release of these findings, and they said if in total, you know, if you put together all of this wastage out of 6 counties, to say just about 200, slightly over 200 million has been wasted. It's such a small figure when you look at the trends that has been since, you know, 2013. So is it something you agree with, that this is just but a tip of the iceberg?
For me, the wastage might seem so big, and I told you, I gave you the history of our assessment. We were looking at the CDF, for example, way back in 2009. The wastage was as high as 29%. The local authority, we assessed local authority, and the wastage was even more than 50%. So when you look at the counties, overall it's about 16% wastage. When you look at the project that actually were badly implemented, they are about, it comes to about 16%. So 16%, our last assessment of the CDF was about 13%. So when you look at 16%, it means coming down to, to about below 10 is very easy. And, one thing that the counties have done that is making them, lose a lot of money is the way in which they are dealing with the project implementation. We've seen cases where counties deal with their contractors directly. For example, you send a contractor to go and construct a maternity in a particular hospital, and then the people in that particular hospital, they are not aware about what's happening. They just receive instructions, show us the space for us to be able to build a maternity, or a school. You are just told, show us a space. We want to build a classroom. You are not aware how much was allocated, how many classrooms are supposed to build. Suppose the county sends somebody to go and build 5 classrooms, and that contractor builds 2 classrooms. Who is there to see that the contractor does what's supposed to be done? And I think some of those things that are making it, contractors have a leeway in terms of doing the work. We've looked at quite a number of projects that were implemented, and especially when you look at the roads. the standards are too bad. For example, when you are going to make these Maram roads, you are clearing the bushes. You do a road without any drainage, any maraming, any what.
Okay.
You are not doing anything.
Right.
You are just wasting that money, because at the end of the day, that road will not be used to serve, the citizens.
Yeah.
Yes.
So wastage and misappropriation is not a new phenomenon by virtue of the county government. We've seen it at the national level. But from where you sit, what is it that's causing these leakages at the county level? What are the factors?
I would say, if you look at the Public Finance Management Act, it provides on how public participation should happen. And I think public participation is the main pillar to hold accountability for the government. And I don't think we have sufficient, I don't think the citizenry, especially in the counties, have full disclosure on
and even
how
understanding.
full disclosure on how the budget for the county government is being spent, and they don't even have a feedback mechanism to be able to give feedback back to the county assemblies. And I think that loop, if that loop is not closed, you end up with seeing scenes like what we saw in Nyeri today, where people are dissatisfied because the money that they thought was going into agriculture and health and education is actually going into entertainment and luxury. So I think the PFM, part of the vision of the PFM was to strengthen accountability. But maybe I should also add that there have been 6 other major laws that have been passed. This is the County Government Act, we've had the Transnational Government Act, we've had the Allocations Act, we've had the Urban Cities Act. So we've had almost
these
6
have been
acts.
passed to what? Streamline?
To streamline and to build structure. But the question is, have we reached the promised land?
Yeah.
And the answer is no. And back in 2010, I remember the World Bank, we were benchmarking with Australia, with the United States, and we realized it would easily be 10 years before we get to a place where we could say this is something that Kenyans can be proud of. This is something that can bring service delivery that is accountable. So the question is, the answer is, it's still work in progress, very much work in progress. A big part of it is how much more money can the national government release to the county government. That's also a big issue, because the county government says, we don't have enough money. And the national government says, well, the little money that you are giving you, we are not seeing
where
it's going to.
Fruit.
Yeah, so that kind of unhealthy tension sometimes has sort of like distracted initiatives on bringing devolution closer to the people, but it's very much work in progress.
And talk to me, both of you gentlemen, about the duplicity problem, because on one hand, you look at the system of devolved system of government, and you have, of course, the governors who are the chiefs in this county government, and there's the senators. You have the woman rep who now have a kitty. They have some money that's supposed to look at gender issues in the counties and constituencies under those counties, of course. The members of county assemblies as well have their own kitty. The National Assembly MPs, CDF is something they've been fighting. Last year, the High Court finding that they should restructure the act to work and be in line with the Constitution. But even now, the matter is still in court after a civil society group moved to court to say even the law as it stands now is still a contradiction of the law, of the Constitution. So do we have too many funds from MPs? Constituency, this is a unit of the county assembly, so really a smaller version of that. Is it all jumbled up, and that is why there's so much of the duplicity?
Yeah, maybe just a quick response. But before I come to that point, when we talk about the funds that the members of the county assembly are also running parallel project implementation, as opposed to executives also doing their parallel project implementation. You see, at the end of the day, the executive cannot be able to access information about or do not interfere with what the members of the assembly are doing, and at that point also the members of the county assembly might not also want to interfere with what the executive are doing. So it brings out the whole question: who is watching who? If the members of the county assembly, they don't understand their role, they think that their role is just implementation when they are supposed to be providing oversight, then it's a very, very big challenge. Secondly, we have what we call the County Budget and Economic Forum, a very important structures that are supposed to be established by the county governments, that brings in also members of the public, for example, members who are not in government. And these are supposed to be the linkage between citizens and the government. Not so many governors have been very keen in terms of establishing the same county budget and economic forum. So they have, like alienated the citizen on the other side. Coming to duplicity, there's a lot of confusion at the county level now. Why? Is because of devolution. Now no one knows that we have funds like CDF. Nobody's actually looking at what the members of parliament are doing. So there are people think that
all eyes on the governor.
Yeah, that everything that is happening on the ground is actually by the governors. So when members of the public see a project that is implemented badly by CDF, they blame the governors because they think that governors are the people who have the money and the people who are doing implementation of projects. So they are not bothered. And when it comes to the county governments now, they are not providing enough information for people to participate. Now it creates even that confusion. One, a citizen not knowing who is supposed to be responsible for this particular project, not participating, and then just hurling blames to the governors. You talked about the case. I think when you go in many counties, you'll never be able to bring a member of or members of parliament in those particular counties and the county government to plan together. Literally, what we call the CIDP, County Integrated Development Plan. All the planning, all the development projects in any county are supposed to be under the CIDP. If members of parliament are planning alone, they are not following the priorities in the CIDP, and also the county government are also planning, following the priority in the CIDP, then there's a divergence.
So should they scrap CDF in your view?
For me, CDF, in the first place, supposed to be, once we establish the counties, CDF is not supposed to be there. We need to have all the funds under the county government. Okay. And in this country, we have more than even 15 devolved resources. Who knows about these others? We talk about CDF, we talk about now county government have come in. Right. Who knows about the existence of like youth fund, these other funds, women fund? We don't hear about them. So
do you agree with those sentiments? That we just have too many kitties, that it's very easy then to confuse people because we don't even know who to hold accountable because everybody has something done. Some will claim, the credit for what has been done by another.
I have a somewhat different view to that.
Okay.
I think there's no problem in having multiple funds. In fact, the more money closer to people, the better, if that money is used for actual service delivery. If the actual citizen can actually go to the MP or the governor or the women's rep, if that's the avenue for them to access those services, I don't think there's a fundamental problem. My only disappointment is in some of the shortcomings of Kenyan politics, whereby every leader believes they have to be in charge of a kitty for you to be powerful. And that's the reason we are seeing so many senators right now vying for governor position. Because in Kenyan politics, it's assumed if you're not in charge of a kitty,
you have nothing to speak of.
Exactly, you almost have no power. But as I told you, one of the shortcomings right now of devolution is on the legislative end. And that's what the Senate was actually designed to do, to create the necessary legal frameworks to activate devolution. I mean, if you look at the United States, the Senate is the upper house. It's actually even more powerful than the congressmen who actually control the past. But I don't think we've gotten to a place where we've appreciated you can actually have roles that are legislative and don't necessarily, don't have a kitty, but have a major role. I think that would be the next phase.
And before we go on break and read some of your feedback, you have noted in your findings in this report the general challenges you faced and have come to realize in as far as the issues in the counties are concerned. Transition challenges. Talk to us briefly about that.
Transition challenges. We've seen, as I said, we've been monitoring the use of devolved funds from way back in 2008. One we saw when local authorities were transitioning actually to recently to the counties. We realized that all the projects that were initially done by the local authorities, counties are very reluctant to take on board and be able to complete them. But that's not even the bigger problem. The bigger problem is that there's no any record about how much was used and who was doing the work.
Wow.
So in terms of taking over those particular projects, it becomes a challenge. Secondly, when you look at the history of this country, look at the Constituency Development Fund. Every project is personalized. When you have a member of parliament today, that member of parliament starts projects. In the next, after 5 years, maybe that member of parliament does not make it to go back to parliament. A new member who is coming will start their own projects. Why? Because they think that if they complete the project that was started by a former member of parliament, credit will go to the former member of parliament. So they leave them undone. So we've seen that trend, and that trend is costing a lot of money to this country. Because today, if you go and audit abandoned projects in the whole country, it runs into trillion. Those are a lot of money.
Yeah.
When you look at the projects that were done by economic stimulus program, some of them were completed, but others have never been completed. When you look at the projects that were done by local authorities, and LATIF was one of the most wasted, the most abused funds that we've ever had in this country from our own analysis.
Okay.
Because it was running into, like out of a budget given to a local authority, some local authority were misusing more than 50%, and we have the records to show that. So all the projects from the local authority that were not completed, actually, is unlikely that the counties will take up.
Okay.
Now, the CDF has been reviewed. It's now called National Constituency Development Fund. They are not supposed to implement some project, for example, that for the function that are devolved. For example, in health, when you go to the counties, some of the health facilities that were being implemented, counties are reluctant to take over those health facilities and complete them. So it's a challenge, you know.
All right, and I saw the Auditor General at the function earlier as you're releasing this report. So when we return from break, I'd love to hear what he had to say, because you are a non-governmental organization. So in terms of the government itself and the structures being put even at the county level to ensure these checks and balances are there, what is happening? Your comments briefly before we take a break. Nahash on minor, you say maybe reducing their locations, there is no better way to tame corruption, so it's hard to explain this. Has so hurt, you say I don't support the looting in government. Dave, it can be tamed if only county leaders are accountable and transparent. Eliud Kirimi, of course, yes, if leaders concentrate on Wanjiko, this question means Wanjiko will never benefit. Chariot Raymond, you say it's plain truth, the looting is real. And then you have Inaki, that's will only when Jesus comes again or another savior is when the looting will end, is what you're talking about. And James Odhiambo, yes, only if they become human enough to feel for that Mamamboga's son who can't afford fees or upkeep. So you're saying it needs to move away from selfish ambition to looking at Mwananchi and their needs and concerns. Keep your thoughts coming on what you think about what needs to happen to tame the wastage at the county level. You're watching The Last Word here on KTN News. When we return, we canvass the issue of those internal checks and balances at the county governments, but also as a taxpayer, when all of these things are happening, what's your recourse? We'll hear from our guests in studio tonight.